The weak data has surprised the audience, and the government also expected a higher growth when planning the budget last year. What are the reasons why the performance of the Hungarian economy remained the same from last year?
The order of the data transmission is that there will be a lot of data in a week or two. We already knew yesterday's data. The reasons are also clear. The whole European economy is stagnant because of the EU and our European membership. For example, Austria, which also performed weaker, is quite surprising from a rich country, but the Germans are also on the same level with us. Generally, countries with a stronger relationship with the German economic sphere have problems. So there are reasons, but to be honest, they are not very interested. Of course, it's good if you know why it's happening, but we're just thinking beings. But from the point of view of our work, this is secondary. So what I have to do now is that in the government, I've been talking about this with ministers responsible for economic affairs over the past week. I don't want to allow us to assume that because of the war and the money sent to Ukraine, which is missing from the European economy, the European economy is weakening, we begin to explain that this is due to reasons other than our own. Because if we start to explain this, which is true, then we lose our ability to act. So I'm not really interested in what the reason is, but I'm interested in how we're going to be successful. How are we going to achieve our goals set for 2025, even if the gypsy kids are jumping out of the sky, or Kalapax, or whatever we call it? So whether there are riots or lightning strikes, we still have our goals for 2025, and we have to achieve them. So I've been talking about this with my ministers over the past week, about what we have to do in order to achieve our goals set for 2025, and this doesn't help, at least intellectually, to understand that until the European economy is stable, it will be twice or 3 times harder for us to bring our own economy into stability. But I don't want to give up a single goal that we set for 2025. This is why, even though we were aware of the expected growth data, in the Parliament we still adopted the Europe's largest tax reduction program. We could have said that this is how the European economy is formed. These unfortunate European leaders have sent 140 billion euros to Ukraine. If this money were not in Ukraine but in the European economy, then there would be growth, not stagnation, but development. But this is a little bit true, but it doesn't affect us now. And yet, we adopted the Europe's largest tax reduction program, especially with the donations given to mothers who have 3 children from October who are 2 and 40 years younger, and they don't need it from January 1. They don't need to pay their income tax until the end of their lives, and in the next year, so from 2027, they don't need it for those under 50, and then for those under 60, and by the end, in 2 or 3 years, those who have at least 2 children and have a mother in Hungary, they don't need to pay this amount of money for the rest of their lives. This is a goal. We cannot give up this, but the same applies to small and medium-sized businesses. There is a program called Demian Sandor. We want to give 1,400 billion forints to small and medium-sized businesses, and we will not cut back on this program, or limit it, or make it worse, but we will do it for the sake of the bad Europe and for the sake of the poor Hungarian data.
We will talk about the Hungarian economic situation and what needs to be done to achieve this, but on the European side, we can see that the EU continues to stand firmly by Rajna's support. Meanwhile, American media is increasingly pointing to the direction of isolation between Russia and Ukraine. So in your opinion, in the current situation, what should Europe change to improve its economic performance?
Hungary lost 20 billion euros because of the war in 3 years. Hungary is a country of 10 million. Germany, 84 million. So how much did the Germans lose, if not 20? And the rest is big. If all this money was in the European economy, I'm not saying it would be a waste of money, I'm not saying that, but the situation is that we wouldn't have any problems. We would have to talk about a greater impact on the expectation of development. So the most important thing we need to understand is that as long as there is a war, and as long as Europe does not turn its back on the war, and does not stand by the side of peace, the whole of European economy will suffer. And now there is a peace initiative. Because the Americans are advancing, we would have one thing to do, to stand by the Americans and say, let's support President Trump's peace initiative, and let there be peace as soon as possible. And then I think it would be the same, but this is not what is happening now. The European leaders still want a war, and they decided that despite the Americans, they will support Ukraine in the war. In fact, they are actually trying to prevent the successful peace initiative of the US president. I think this is a mistake because we have to see, and this will happen, but until then we will lose a lot of money. We have to see that without the United States we cannot finance and sustain neither the Ukrainian army nor the Ukrainian economy. Ukraine is a country that cannot sustain itself. So if Western money does not arrive in Ukraine, this state would not exist. And now, not that we would limit the money, but now they have made the decision. For example, the European People's Party, which, by the way, is the strongest political figure in European politics, at a Congress for 1 or 2 days, they have made the decision that more money must be sent, and this is not possible without the Americans. I heard the Ukrainian president with my own ears, because it happened at the European Council. The Ukrainian president said personally that they want a 1 million strong army, a 1 million soldier army in the next period, but they do not have a penny to sustain it. And they do not ask these Ukrainians, they demand from the European Union that if the US does not give money, but the 1 million strong Ukrainian army keeps Europe up because they think it is good for them to have such an army. So this is going to take an incredible amount of money. So instead of us Europeans, the money we have, we do not dream of something good. We do not have a lot of money. The European economy has been rather unsuccessful in the past 10 years. It has lost its competitive ability. So instead of spending our existing money on ourselves, and let's say we do not want to keep a 1 million strong Ukrainian army in order in Ukraine, we would strengthen our army. The money they want to spend there, we could spend here too, for the benefit of our economy. Through our army, part of the economy would go back. Instead of doing this, for some mysterious reason, there are various reasons for this. They take out the money from Europe with a stick. Our money too in Ukraine. Meanwhile, without the Americans, there is no point in spending this money. This is how we stand. But let me say it again. We have to deal with our own business. This is Hungary. This is the Hungarian economy. We know its strengths, its weaknesses, and we have to set goals, and we have to achieve them. These are big, ambitious goals. So in 2025, we still expect a very good year. We want to have a good year. We set ambitious goals, and we want to achieve them all.
You already mentioned the resolution that the European People's Party will support Ukraine's financial and military support and the accelerated EU membership. What are the consequences because the TISA party, which is a member of the European People's Party, the president says that when all the conditions and the planned time for membership are known, then a referendum with legal binding force will be held on this issue.
In such an important matter, which is apparently very important, because we know when they want to take over Ukraine, so it is not worth putting our heads in the sand that we will believe that this will be a decisive issue, because the European People's Party itself, the head of the European Commission, that is, the first ever bureaucracy of the European Union, announced that by 2030. So that's 4 or 5 years. And the European People's Party also said that it had to be accelerated. accelerated, so we have to remember that once, and if it is prepared, it is not about this. It is about how fast they want to take them up. Therefore, a vote is now being held in Hungary. So we don't have to talk about what kind of vote it will be because the Ukrainian EU membership is knocking on the door here. The European leaders, especially the European People's Party, which is the mother party of the TISA party, wants to bring them in, and the Ukrainian European Union membership is knocking on the door of the Hungarian economy. So we have to prevent this. This is why a vote is now being held. We don't have to vote once, here and now. I can assure you that I will vote.
But by the way, it is interesting that the European People's Party cares about the Ukrainian Union membership. At the same time, at the Star Festival, you told the young people that if they don't want to join the EU, the Ukrainian Union membership is more dangerous in Brussels than in Budapest?
Because the people of Brussels think that the Ukrainian Union should be financed by taking up a huge amount of money. They don't argue that the European Union doesn't have money for it. They don't argue that the European Union should invest in us. Because if we take up credit as we are today, that is, if the European economy is not competitive, then we will not be able to pay it back later, and our children and grandchildren will lose everything. There will be a big pile of money in it. And this can be prevented now, so Europe has to prevent when they want to pay the debts. So that's the difference. On the other hand, I think there are EU countries that I would suspect that have already bought Ukraine. So their big companies are there, and they think that if we send money from Europe, so from Hungary, then a large part of that money will end up with their companies. Just like it happened to us. In the first few years, about 80% of the money went back to those countries from whom the money came to us, because it was their companies who were competitive here. This is how this national government has been split for many years. Today, the ratio is much better. Of course, there are large foreign companies here. Some EU money comes to them too. But basically, today we spend the EU money so that the Hungarian economy, economy. But that was the situation here too. And they didn't take us up because our hearts fell on us, or because they were relieved, or because the Christian feeling suddenly took over. That's not what happened. They took us up because they calculated that it would be worth it for them. And to be honest, if it would be worth it for Hungarians on the basis of numbers and mathematics, it would be worth it for us. We are on the wrong side, we pay for it, we go bankrupt. That's why I don't support the membership.
Seeing these connections and the frustration of the People's Party this week, how did the importance of the opinion poll change?
Well, it became more important. Today, it is obvious that in Brussels, the European membership has accelerated the judgment of Ukraine on a wrong and harmful policy. And this can be prevented now. If the steamroller moves forward and we reach the final decision gate 2 or 3 years later, it will be very difficult there. It is much more difficult than to prevent it from coming into motion. Now we have to open up not only the eyes of Hungarians, but also the eyes of citizens of countries in the same shoes as us in Europe. We have to open up, and I have to say, people, this is not only a problem for Hungarians. You too, as Hungarians, should speak up. Your leaders in Europe say what is not good for Hungarians. And we prevent it even now.
Let's go back to a question about the connection between TIS and the People's Party, because yesterday he also signed the petition that the National Resistance Movement initiated so that, as they say, King Kolar, the representative of the TIS party, should leave public life. He was the one who used to say that it helps the enemy, and the enemy helps the people. The president of the TISZ party reacted to this petition by saying that you are against created and imagined enemies, that you are opposed to words and actions. How do you see what is the purpose of your work in TISZs in Brussels? For the sources to come, as they say, or for them not to come?
If you allow me, I would not argue with the TS party. I think it is necessary that at least part of the money that we pay to the EU and the foreign companies get back in the EU budget. That's why our money goes to us. So it's not a gift. So we get money from the European Union because we allow Western companies to make serious profits here, of course, as it is good for us. That's why it's not givable, but it goes. That's the money of the Hungarians. Now they're blocking it. I managed to get some of it, so I'm in constant negotiations and fights. 11 billion euros, that's for the Hungarians. So we pay 100% of the first 3 years of the entire pedagogical pension from this amount. This year, too, we will bring home an amount of 1,000 billion forints. So we are constantly fighting in Brussels for our money to come here. And they admitted it. So it's not worth arguing about what they're doing, because a lady named Kolar Kinga said in her own voice that they are working so that we can't bring these money home. She said that they have been obstructing and constantly obstructing the renewal of 50 hospitals. The result of their work is that I, the national side, who is fighting in Brussels, could not achieve full success yet. She said it in her own voice, so I do not recommend that we be childish or be primitive. The starting point of a debate is the fact. So the fact is that this MP named Kolar Kinga, who earns 10 million forints a week, works in Brussels every day to prevent the national government from bringing home the resources from which we renew hospitals, build roads. This is a matter of fact. It is not worth arguing about whether they are doing this. They said it in their own voice. Anyone who has ears can hear this. Everyone in this country knows about this. This is a bad thing. I do not want to offend a lady by saying ugly things. This woman named Kolar Kinga is doing a bad thing. This is a shame for the Hungarians. She is doing a bad thing, and that is why she wants Hungary to be successful, so that they, the TISA party, can get into government. This is the Brussels-TISA Pact. This is a matter of fact. And when I signed this petition, I signed it because I thought it was not right, and we should raise our voice against it as much as possible.
By the way, in the Congress, Manfred Weber, the newly elected president of the People's Party, did not say anything about it. What do you think? What measures will he try to take to achieve a change of government in the next year, the Brussels policy?
It is not worth thinking about it as if we had to dig up a secret or a mystery or an open question. I was in the European Parliament last autumn during the EU presidency when I introduced our presidency program. The president of the European People's Party and the representatives of the TISA party who said it, the leader of the European People's Party, who is currently the strongest party, said it to me, turning his head, that it is over for him, it is over for his government, he is leaving. The new government will be formed by the TISA party. They said it, so it is not worth thinking whether in Brussels they want to replace the current government with an old government. A large war network which works to make such a government for Hungary, which will finally carry out what they ask of Brussels. We can make this decision. Then the Hungarians will decide whether they want the old government of Brussels or a national government. Then the Hungarians will decide. My job is to make it clear to the Hungarians that there will be serious consequences. I will give you an example. For example, let's say Kadar Kocka, a garden house. In a heating season, it pays out about 260,000 HUF, a family living in it. This is because Hungary has a regime protection system, 260. For the same heating season, Slovakia pay out 660,000 HUF. A Polish pays out 860,000. We have to give up the regime reduction system. We only have a national government on the side of the people, and we don't give it up. It may be that the Poles pay 3 times or 4 times as much. The Slovaks pay 3 times, but it's their business. We are not volunteers. We have a regime protection system. If there is an old government which will take over Brussels, the first thing will be to abolish it. This will kill the Hungarian families. We are not talking about who is in power. We are talking about what will happen to the country. This is the same in the matter of gender. This is the same in the matter of multiplication. We have to abolish multiplication every day. How are we going to sustain Hungary if we don't take the tax from multiplication and the bank? We don't have a national government or a Brussels old government or a national government. What will be the consequences? These are serious things. I am only working so that by the time we get to the election, which is expected to happen in a year or so, by then every Hungarian should be aware of what the election is about.
If we go back to the economy, let's talk about what the email mentioned. That despite the difficult circumstances, what can be done, what needs to be done to achieve these even despite the difficult circumstances?
Alpha and Omega's beginning and end. The most important point is that the membership of the Ukrainian European Union should not be allowed. The European People's Party, including TISA, made a decision last week to send another 5 billion euros to us. If we protect ourselves well, then the amount of money flowing from Europe to Ukraine must definitely be reduced. This is a real internal political dispute, because not only TISA, but also the DK, that is, the party of György, says the same thing. So today, the Hungarian opposition may be excluding our country. This is not clear. But all other opposition parties support Ukraine's finance, military support for the next 10-20 years. I talked about this to the young people this week. In conclusion, the most important thing is that we stay strong in Ukraine, and in the meantime, whatever data comes in, let's not give up our own goal. First, we have to protect all jobs. 4.7 million people work. Whatever difficulties there are in Europe, foreign companies operating in Hungary face any difficulties at home, we have to protect our jobs. And we decided last week, but maybe we haven't announced it yet, that we have an industrial development policy. We want to start 100 new factories this year. Some of them may already have started building, but after the economic growth needs more than this, we have increased it to a 100 or 150. So we will support not 100, but 150 factories in Hungary this year. And we must not forget the little ones. The strengthening of small and medium-sized enterprises is still a strategic issue in Hungary. In the meantime, we have to continue the price-cutting policy. After the food prices, there will be industrial prices. There will be a government meeting, and I would like to make decisions on this. And as we promised the pensioners, that we will restore the food price around October in the next 25 years. Now we are discussing the 26-year budget. Now we are waiting for the Budgetary Council's opinion on how the data showing the smaller growth will affect the 26-year budget. So we are consulting with them. I think that the 26-year budget, which is an anti-war, peaceful party budget, will stand on its feet, not only in 2025, but also in 2026.
about your participation in joining the EU, as well as the political disputes related to this? Prime Minister Viktor Orban.